You can now buy the world's smallest Moxin controller with wheelie mode from Anyland. And yes, I had this in my pocket the whole time. It's that small. Turns your Rev 1 into a Rev Pro. But should you? Today we rip out the old, slap in the new, and see what makes it a better 48 volt. But what might also make it the absolute worst bike for wheelies. Why won't you go forward? Anyland is now selling their auto wheelie controllers separately. It's an Anyland Moxin collaboration and is ideal for anyone looking to turn their Rev 1 into a Pro. Disclaimer though, this controller is specifically designed for the Rev 1 or as a direct replacement for the Rev Pro only. However, that being said, if you know what you're doing, you might be able to adapt this to any other kind of bike. Does make me wonder. But that's another day. Today we're tearing down the Rev 1, pulling out whatever controller that it has in there and swapping it out. The Anyland hides its inner workings pretty well, so what that means is that we got a lot of bolts and a lot of plastic to remove. First of which being the triangular vent looking piece, or pieces I should say. There's two nuts and bolts in the middle to sandwich them together, so we first remove those, then the two bolts on the bottom of each side to remove the clamshell. Next I'll take off the top plastic that holds the key and the seat. This is another 5 bolts, and then it slides right up and off. Now it's time for the side plastics with a whopping 6 bolts on each side to take those off, as well as the metal battery cover that's sandwiched in between. Graceful. It's a lot of bolts, but now we can see what the Anyland looks like on the inside, and Mama always says it's the inside that counts. It is very interesting to see all the innards of the Anyland because like I said, it's a very tight package, and I thought it was pretty tight with the Rev Pro, but with this one, it's even tighter because that controller is a lot bigger. We'll see the side-to-side comparison in a bit, but now that we have the plastics out of the way, we can see what to do next, and we have some bolts here and probably here and on the other side for the controller, and I think that means we got to get this battery out of the way, so we need to fish out the connection from the battery and slide that out. It's still very tight fit, and then we can get to the bolts and get the controller out of there. That is definitely a tight squeeze getting that controller out and all the connections off of it in addition to that, but now that we have everything out, we can see this compared to the new one, and look at the size difference alone. That's the really interesting thing here between the new and the old, and the old, by the way, is an A300 Freecon. Never heard of that brand before, but for reference, it's the exact same size as a Far Driver ND72300. Now I don't know all the specs of both these controllers, but it does have some information on the controllers themselves, as you can see, and the primary difference between these two is voltage, of course, 48 for this one, but this one 48 to 72, interesting. And then they have bus current, which is line current, 50 amps here and 55 amps here. So this one does give it a little bit extra in addition to having the ability to wheelie. The other noticeable difference between the new one and the old are the connections themselves to the controller. So this one comes with its own wiring harness. So we have a little bit more to strip out of this bike. We have to first get behind the number plate and unplug everything that goes up to the controls, then a couple more connections underneath, which is for the key switch and for the light. And here you can see the differences between the two controllers, and they look pretty much identical, so it's going to be really easy plug and play with everything else. Up top here you can see the Jewellet connectors that go to all the controls, and they're color coordinated, can't mess that up. Then the only difference down here really is just the connections between the two controllers. The old one here you can see are two bigger style ones, and for the new one we just have this small one right here, which goes to pretty much everything. It looks like the only thing I have to pull off is this little mystery box, and I saw this on the Rev Pro. I thought that this was the wheelie control, like this was the sensor or whatever it is that angle detects for you, but it has to go to the new one. And so now I'm thinking that this is actually like a DC to DC converter. This is probably a step down so that it has 12 volts. I can trace the wires and see that the power out that goes from this goes directly to the lights, which would make sense. It also has this additional power lead which goes straight to the battery connections on the controller. Not sure why it has an additional one, but we'll go with it. But since it's a pretty easy process, we can reverse what we just did and throw the new one back into the bike and make all of those connections. Okay, time for the main event, putting this controller into the bike and getting it hooked up. And as you can see, I did a little bit of modification to make this a little easier for myself. Added a bit of nail polish to each of these 3 letters for the phase wires, so that way I know exactly which one goes where. So blue is W, green is V, and yellow is U. I also had to make a trip to Home Depot. I'm not sure if you would have to do this or not, but at least with the kit that I got, it did not come with posts for this. This does not take the same size post as the old controller. You have to get new bolts. And if you need bolts, you need size M4. I got M4 12mm length ones, 5 of them for the controller, and 2 M4s that are 30mm long so I can actually secure the controller to the frame. Add in 5 M4 washers and 2 M4 nuts, and you have everything that you need. I'm gonna first start with connecting the phase wires on the controller here, as well as the positive and negative battery terminal connections. That also includes the positive and negatives that are coming out of the wiring harness, of which there are 2. Oops, I just realized I missed one of these 2. There's another positive and negative that go to this, which is the side charger. That's important. See, that's why I said earlier there's 2 additional connections. I don't even listen to my own voiceover. Now that we have the main connections on, we can slide the controller into its home and get this mounted, and there is so much room for activities. Look at this. Because this is so small, it can only be mounted in 2 spots, so we're gonna use a couple of holes, one right here, and then one in the front here, so we're gonna slide down those big bolts, the 30mm long ones, with a nut on top, and get those cinched down. Make sure the head of the bolt is actually on the underside, and then the nut is on top, so that way we don't impede the space that the battery needs underneath. Actually scratched that bolt placement. When I had both on one side, when I was tightening this, the whole controller was tilting up, and that's because there's some fins at the very bottom of this that stick out. So in order to make sure that both of these are tight and level, I took this one out and then put it on the other side, so now it's just kinked ever so slightly to the side there. No worries though, like I said, this has a lot of room to play with. That's almost everything. Just 2 main connections to the controller that we haven't done yet, which are the hall sensor wires and the main wiring harness wires. And then I think we're ready to slide this battery in and get everything else together. Don't mind me. Nothing to see here. Also, when you're putting the battery in, there is actually a battery hold. This was confusing for me a little bit, but there's this gigantic bolt that sits right here, but there is a metal plate that it sits against. So it's not actually pushing on the metal housing, it's pushing on this, which is pushing on the metal housing to keep it from moving side to side, I guess. It's a little weird, but just don't forget to put that back in place, because last time I did this with another bike, it popped out and I had no idea where that came from. Now I know. Now it's the easy stuff, just putting the plastics back on. Although that said, there are so many bolts. This is how many bolts that I had to take off of this thing just to strip it down. So now we gotta put all of that back together. Side plastics, top plastics, and the clamshell. Clamshell being the last part really sucks. I don't know how they get this thing together from the factory. Well, now we finally have a complete bike. So now we can put the key in, turn it on, and see if it works. I probably should have done this before I put all the plastics on in case I got it wrong. But it looks like I got it right. Should we try it? But now back to the past. We haven't done anything yet to this, and let's see a before and after of top speed, and at least if we can get a feel for acceleration. All right, here we go. Top speed run with the downhill as well, so we're gonna get this as fast as possible. As per usual, 35.8 is all that it shows. If I remember last time, the top speed that we actually did on the GPS was 28, but we'll see if we improve that at all. Let's see what that was. Just as I suspected, 28 still. It seems to be locked at that. I guess we can also get a feel for acceleration and just go 0 to everything. So even in the top speed mode, it's pretty forgiving. There's a definite delay when it comes to the throttle response, so it won't do anything like surprising. You can definitely feel that acceleration, or lack thereof, when attempting to wheelie this thing, but it is possible. Despite how terrible I am at this. Hey, that wasn't that terrible, but it won't be as terrible with the new controller, obviously. Which we definitely will see, but first a few other things. I want to see top speed, I want to see acceleration, everything else. First thing is top speed, here we go. Much faster off the line, I gotta say. And we're doing the exact same stretch. It says 35.8 again, so it's giving the same number, but it feels faster. Let's see if that's actually the case. I remember last time it was 28 miles an hour, and now it's 34. So now this is accurate, so that's interesting. That means that this display is tuned for the Rev Pro, not for the Rev01, because this was overestimating. Now it's actually accurate. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but the acceleration feels so much better. Look at that, I popped up the front just a little bit. It's that snappy off the line. It really has that much of a difference. Probably not just in the amperage that it provides, that 5 extra amps, but also in the tuning, I think. It definitely feels more aggressive, more intentional, more fun. Let's be real, more fun. Still just as agile when it comes to cornering and everything. Like, that wouldn't change because I swapped the controller, but that fun handling plus the added acceleration and snappiness that this has now just amplifies it that much more. Very chuckable. Now that's all well and good, of course, but the pièce de résistance of this controller is wheelie mode, of course, so we gotta try that. Damn it. Well, that was a hell of a time for the battery to die, but it's another day, and we can see what actually matters on this controller, which is, of course, wheelie mode. Whoa, it works. That fell further back than the Rev Pro. I'm gonna have to compare the two because I'm in the highest mode, 45 degrees, but that felt a little more like 50 or something. Huh. Whoa! What the heck? You see it working, right? It goes up and it locks at whatever degree that is, 45, and then, whoa! Then see, it's weird, like the progression of it. It goes, and then it kind of like lets off, so it almost gives you more throttle to get to that degree, and then it locks, and then it slows down almost immediately. And I think that's what's throwing me off. You can see the difference right here. Let's do it just standing still. Goes up, lock, slow. And then you can go backwards. That's so weird. I'm gonna try one level less, 35 degrees. See if that gives me any issue. See, level 2, at least I'm able to keep momentum and move forward. But then if I do the exact same thing in level 3, it doesn't move me forward. Even with some speed behind it, it just stops. That's so weird. Okay, just to prove to myself that I'm not being gaslit, we're back on the Rev Pro, the OG Rev Pro. And look at that, perfectly fine. Level 3. And it lets you roll forward, even when I'm leaning back like this. Yes, it's slowing down a little bit, but it lets me keep going. Interesting, isn't it? That was a perfect example right there. I had speed, I had momentum, and then the second it got there, it said, nope, you're done. Even sooner there. Nope, you're done. Back it up. Very interesting. I'm not exactly sure how this is tuned or what the tune looks at in order to do the wheelie mode, but something between the throttle and the angle detection just aren't speaking the same language. I mean, it works, technically, but is it really a wheelie if you're stationary? I brought all this information to Anyland to see if they had a solution, and they came back with a few suggestions, but if I'm honest, it all kind of boiled down to be better at wheelies. Well, I tried. So basically what Anyland was telling me was that this bike was actually going over that 45 degree mark. Because it was going over, it was compensating, and that's why it was slowing down the motor. So they're saying to get to that 45 degree slower so that it lets the controller take over and not overcorrect and then just slow everything down. But looks like it's still doing that. Like, I'm moving forward right now, but I haven't reached that degree yet. I was just wheeling on my own, not relying on the wheelie mode. All right, let's try this as consistently and as smoothly as possible, getting up to that angle. And I'm even going to leave my feet off of the pegs so that way I can maintain a little bit more of a balance. My balance is still not the greatest on side to side, so eliminating all those factors, we'll just see how the controller handles a smooth, steady increase. We'll get some speed this time. Still haven't made it there. You see that? I'm still pegged. And just... come on, man. Go forward. Just go forward. I do need to get better at wheelies. Obviously, my 7-day crash course that I did a couple weeks ago was not enough. But even so, I don't think I'm the problem here. Anyway, the link for that controller is down in the description below, I guess. And if you want to get an Anyland, use code lexdfox for $100 off. Maybe if it's in a different bike.